Okay, we're on the internet.
On the internet. I love the internet.
Well, Ben, I'm really excited that we're talking right now.
Are you?
Yes. So,
Okay.
yeah, well, I really wanted to do a special edition of, uh, talking to you because of RxJS 5.5 beta. Isn't it like 5.5 beta what? Beta 0.5 or something like that
It's
right now?
we're a beta 2. There's liable to be a beta 3 that comes out here
Mm.
shortly.
So, give us an update of like all the changes and all the new things that people can
All
do.
right. So the biggest and most important thing that'll affect a lot of people in this release is the addition of the lettable operators. Uh, one one thing. So to explain what a lettable operator is basically it's a way of being able to use operators within this pipe function. For most people, that's all it really means. But what it really is it's a higher order function where you pass the arguments like you would normally pass to map or merge map or whatever arguments you'd pass to those, and it returns a function that takes an observable and returns an observable. And that can be used with an older RxJS operator called let, which is where the word lettable comes from. It's not in the code that way. We've got it in the docs named lettables, but that's been a little confusing for people. Really, it's just a functional way to use operators. And it's a big deal for a lot of reasons. One, because it becomes much easier to write your own operators because all you need to do is write a function instead of extending observable and doing all this other stuff. And let's see, two, the other thing is it should enable better tree shaking down the road, especially because now you have to import the operators directly where you want to use them. And three, you can import all the operators from one location, which is better than in the past. You had to add operators from many different locations or import them from many different locations. So that's was not very ergonomic. So we're fixing all those things, and I think it'll be really good. So it'll help keep bundle sizes down, and it'll make it easier for people to make their own custom operators and just have them blend in however they want.
So,
So
is it now that the library is 3 KB, or is it basically like 30, from 30 to 3? So is it like 33-ish KB now because you have the little operators and the other operators in there?
so the number that comes from is gzipped and minified the global bundle. So the global bundle was like 36, and right now for 5.5 it's actually up a little bit because we had to add these lettable operators. But we needed to add the lettable operators so that in version 6 we can move to only having the lettable operators and having a supporting library have the add dot chaining type operators. So it's a little bit of pain like moving up before we can get it to go back down, because the lettable operators actually do make it a little bit easier to reduce the size of the operators because it's easier to compose operators from other operators. It's easier to build them a little bit in a little bit more of a small way. And it's kind of the first step towards making the library smaller. So we had to get a little bit bigger in order to start getting smaller. But I can so there's one other thing, and actually I can screen share here in a little bit and kind of show some code. Now I won't be able to run any code because I didn't have time to set up anything before we talked. But one thing that I've had people say is that, oh, this is a breaking change. We have to use these lettable operators. This is not a breaking change. The lettable operators are an addition. You could call them pipeable operators too, I guess, but they're all new features. All the old features are still there. You can still use the add operator stuff in the upcoming 5.5 release. Every version of 5.0 will always, work with every future version of 5.0 releases. If we have any, if there's a 5.6 for some reason, everything that was in 5.5 will work in 5.6. Everything that was in 5.0 will work in 5.6. So we're adhering to semantic versioning, and there are some people that have the idea that we're not, like that we're taking away the other versions of the operators, and that's just not true. So that's important for people to know. But
it's like when the Angular material team stripped away my material module.
how
I was
dare
like,
they?
no, don't take it away from me.
Well, hopefully they versioned it properly when they did
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think it's still being deprecated, but they took it away because they wanted me to import properly so I could tree shake properly, which fine. I get it. I get
Right,
it.
right.
So like another question is just how does it affect ecosystem related things like redux observable?
It shouldn't affect it really at all, other than, how people want to use operators coming in. Like it should, I mean, one interesting thing about the Redux to observable epic is, since generally people take in an observable of actions and return an observable actions, they don't really use the second argument that much. In those cases, like technically that's a lettable operator almost. Like it's got the same signature where you've got a function that takes an observable and returns an observable. So, interestingly, you could, theoretically just pass like a merge map in there or something if you wanted. But I don't know how useful that is. It's just it's circumstantial more than anything else. But it shouldn't affect people too much. It might be more fun or more useful for some people to build these operators out functionally, or build epics out functionally and be using the operators to help them build out functionally. But yeah, it shouldn't be a huge effect on those people. Let me share my screen really quick.
All right, as you're sharing your screen, I have another question.
Okay.
What are you not sharing with us?
What am I not sharing with you? I don't know. I don't know. I think that, can you see this, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Make it a little bigger.
Well, right now, one of the things that it should be a change that's nobody even knows about is I mean, people know about it, but nobody should feel it, is in the 5.5 betas, we've changed the packaging structure to where we want to be able to better support tree shaking in rollup and Webpack. And that means that we had to kind of move the files around into different directories and deploy a package JSON in each directory. So these things could discover where certain files were. And as it turns out, it looks like some of that has been, well, some of it's been a little painful for people. And there was some weird problems on certain Linux machines, and we resolved that. And now there's some issues around capitalization or not being capitalized, lowercase, uppercase issues in Windows. So I don't know if we're going to be able to get that in 5.5. We're going to try to resolve issues for everybody so nobody has any issues, and then get it out. Otherwise, that particular change, which is it was a more critical change to trying to get better tree shaking, is going to have to move or wait for a 6.0 release, which hopefully won't take that long.
So better tree shaking is not right now, or is there better tree shaking a little bit right now and then?
There is better tree shaking right now. The problem is in the beta. The
How do you
problem is, in
better
order to get that, you can't be on Windows, I guess, because Windows is causing problems. But
basically what you're saying is if you're using 5.5 beta right
beta 2, yeah.
now and it works, then if you're importing properly, you're able to shake.
Yes. Shake.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. So that's what you mean by better tree shaking, basically like it's working, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, and it's working in the bit, like I said, 5.5 beta 2. And people that use that will see a reduction in the size of the output bundles, but probably to the amount of, I think on average, what the Angular team had said was around 10, like a little more than 10K for like an average app. So if someone's using a lot of Rx, then it might be even more than that. But the problem is there are some build issues in Windows because of what we had to do to move the module files around within Rx, and how Windows locates things in capitalized or not capitalized directories. So yeah.
Get into some of this goodness.
All right. So the biggest difference with these lettable operators is what you would do is you'd still import, you know, some sort of observable creation method. So I'm going to import observable range here. So range is this thing here. It's the same thing as using observable.range. I'm just importing it directly. This has always been available in RX5. So importing it directly is better than adding it to observable because you're not like mutating, you know, the observable class itself and patching functions onto it. So this would create a range of values between 0 and 9, an observable of a range of values between 0 and 9. And then if I wanted to do operators before, I would do something like RxJS add operator map, import RxJS add operator filter, right? And so, and then after that, I'd say map that, and maybe I want to filter everything less than, it would do something like that, and then we'd subscribe. I'll get a console or something. This is what we would do before. And what changes, or what kind of is crazy, is like this thing, this stuff here, lines 3 and 4, could be in anybody's file at all. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. Could be in any file in your project, and this would still work. But if it's not in that file, then this wouldn't work. If you stop using map or filter and you forget to remove these, it's not, your linter and your build system are not going to complain because it can't know that you're not using them. So those things kind of stink. Not to mention that anyone using your library downstream now has map and filter all over their observables, and they don't really realize that that's what's doing it, and they might depend on it. And then if you remove it, then you break them. So those are problems. So what you can do now is, instead of this, you can just import map and filter, not flitter, filter, from RxJS operators. And this, instead of dot chaining, we use this new pipe method, and we comma chain them really in this manner. And so what we're saying now is pipe this observable through these functions. And each of these functions, actually, when you call filter like this, it returns a function that takes an observable and returns an observable. Same thing for map. But this will work exactly the same as the previous code. So this, and the nice thing is that now if I forget to include filter for some reason, my like TypeScript or Babel or whatever you're using to build this is going to complain that I did not import filter. This is undefined. And then likewise, if I removed filter for some reason, then your lint rule is going to complain that this is unused. So it's just overall better. Not to mention that now I'm not trampling the observable prototype. So if someone else is consuming my observables downstream, or also consuming RxJS, like in kind of like a different part of my app, like they're not depending on a filter that I've added to the observable prototype. It's everybody needs to pull it in explicitly. So that's one advantage. And the other advantage is I can go in and I can say, my operator, and whatever my operator is, let's just say my operator takes some function and it applies it to the observable three times. So this is some source observable. And inside of here, you would return a new observable. It's down in another line so we can read it. And inside of this observable, we subscribe to the source. And I'm going to give a next method. We're going to, let's say our operator calls the function that we have like 3 times or something. This is like the weirdest operator in the world, but that's what it does. It's like some sort of weird triple map. Other things you'd have to do is you have to make sure you pass the errors through. Not console observer. and you'd have to pass. I really want to type console for some reason. Right. This would be your own custom operator. And now, if you wanted to use your own custom operator in here, you just say like my operator, and you could do whatever you wanted in there, right? And you could use it wherever you wanted. You can just compose it in. However you wanted to build it. It doesn't have to be the same thing everywhere, but now you can just compose it in, and all you had to do is write this function, where before you would have had to go in and extend observable and all this other stuff. So before it was really ugly. Before, the solution was to make a new observable class that extended observable, override lift, add my operator method to it. And it was just not, it wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but now now it's very, very easy and straightforward. Oh, and I guess we would have had to import observable here for this to work, but.
So instead of importing range from rx/observable/range, then, and exactly what you're doing there, is there going to be like RxJS/observable, and then you can just import like range and subject and observable?
Well, yeah, ideally that's what we have in version 6. Actually, in version 6, what I'd really like to see is that all of these things would just be like import range observable map filter from RxJS, right? Like that would be ideal. We could just do that, and then you have everything. So, and maybe at some point we can even namespace it so it'd be like RxJS core or something like that, because there might be like RxJS DOM libraries or other places where we actually want to namespace those things. But it would be great if we could just kind of do everything in one line, because there aren't a lot of name overlaps. Oh, speaking of naming, there are a few things that have changed. Like, for example, before we had the catch operator. So if you had some observable, you could say catch, right? Unfortunately, catch is a keyword, and it would give you an error, and you'd return, some other observable, right? But like catch is a keyword, so we can't have a pipeable function named catch. So that's going to be called, catch error. If I was going to write it out, it would be pipe. It's not a good one, so you have to be catch error. That'd be the same thing. But it's unfortunate we have to have names like catch error. Switch becomes switch all. Do actually becomes tap, which tap. So that's one that's up for debate. But tap we picked because it was terse. It's descriptive for what you do because you're just tapping in to get the value passing through. And it existed in older versions of RxJS. So like version 4 and lower all had tap as an alias for do. So that's why tap was chosen. But yeah, so there were some names there, and we figured it was better than what we had been doing, which was like naming it like underscore catch, underscore do, underscore, throw, or throw for like the creation method or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the other thing.
What about so what was I going to ask? Oh, well, I could bring up one thing. Like basically all talks on RxJS are now void. And
I mean, they're not. They're talks on RxJS 5. So if they're talks on RxJS 5, they are not void. However, I would suggest once Rx 5.5 is released, I highly recommend people move towards the pipeable or lettable operators, just because it's going to be a better approach for them in the future. I think they're going to want to do it. The only time it gets a little gross is when you've only got one operator you're applying, then you've got, oh, I've got a pipe just to apply one catch, right? That's kind of sucky, but The rest of the time, it's just a much better experience for people.
Yeah, best practices are good.
Oh, you know, another thing is if we actually get, there's a proposal to have what's called the pipeline operator. And the pipeline operator actually would make it so instead of having this here, what you would end up having is
Proposal where in TC39?
yeah, it's TC39 proposal. I don't know if it's got a lot of champions, but basically it would make all this stuff look like this, and it would be literally the same thing.
Whoa.
Right, but
I'm not sure how I feel about these things.
yeah.
But that's cool. So December's RX workshop. Let's just put you on the spot again. Are we learning this?
Yeah. So RX workshop in December. I'm gonna have to go through my workshop and change it around so people are gonna be using the pipeable operators.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely, and you know, we'll try to build our own pipeable operator, I think.
And then how does this affect? You were saying that this affects the like how people contribute to new operators. So this is the stuff that OJ was talking about, right? We're talking about creating different. Was it creating different repos for people to be able to contribute, or you remember that conversation?
Oh yeah, so there's a discussion. So people are like, oh, you know what you really need? You really need my awesome new operator that does whatever, like my triple function operator that I've got here. And so people will propose these things. They'll think, oh, you guys should add this to RxJS core. And sometimes there's some value to whatever they're proposing, but it'll be very limited value. And you know, it makes it hard for us to want to adopt it because then we would be on the hook for supporting it, right? And I think that we want to have like an RxJS contrib area where people can add operators or add observable creation methods. Ideally, that's probably more important. And you know, if it does have a high degree of use, then you know, maybe it gets pulled into RxJS core, or it gets pulled into RxJS proper, that sort of thing. But just somewhere where everyone knows where to look to find RxJS related libraries and operators.
What do we call that? Do we call
I
it?
mean, usually people call it a contrib area, like the RxJS contrib libraries. So like that's, I mean, in other communities, I've seen things just being called contrib.
That's not sexy.
No, it's not. But it's good. Like what would you call it? What would make it sexier?
I don't really know.
If it was like if we just called it like the Ryan Reynolds contrib.
I don't think Ryan Reynolds is sexy.
You do or you don't?
I don't. I'll be honest.
Okay. Maybe that's just me.
You and your Ryan Reynolds obsession.
Yeah.
Well, Ben. I mean, Jay kind of looks like Ryan Reynolds, right? Like that would explain the relationship.
He does kind of. But you know how excited he would be to hear that.
Oh God. Let's hope he doesn't listen to it.
He's a big Deadpool fan. No, I'm sure he tuned out already. If he was listening, he's probably done.
Like, man, what are they talking about? All the stuff I already know.
Right.
Okay, so is this at any stage? Is the pipe operator? Was it called the pipe operator?
The pipeline operator. It is. I want to say it's still stage 0, maybe stage 1. I don't think it's got a champion. I think we're going to try to pick some of that up here at Google. I'm not sure. So,
and when
I don't want to speak for Google, but I know that there are a lot of people interested in this. So, because there's another one called the bind operator that was very similar. The difference is the bind operator, instead of passing the left-hand side of the operation as the first argument to the right-hand side, what it did is it passed the left-hand side of the operation, the result of the left-hand expression, it passed to this inside of the function on the right hand. So there's a lot of debate about how to restrict that, and it could do a lot more because of that this context thing. And I think that the bind operator is so much more complicated than the pipeline operator that maybe the pipeline operator stands a better chance. But that's my opinion, and I'm not on any of the committees. So.
None of your opinions matter anyways. Okay, and then observable being added to Chrome. When's that happening?
Observable being added to Chrome. I don't know. Hopefully sometime soon. Tomorrow. Yeah. I'll just get right on that. Hold on, I'm typing now.
I should tweet Jaffa the Cake. I should be like, look at this podcast where Ben says that observable is going to be added.
Yeah, it's
find a feature flag.
I mean, I think that I talked with Jake Archibald, that's Jaffa Cake, about
Jaffa the Cake.
Yeah, so that's his Twitter handle. Pretty much everyone I've spoken to that's involved in the WetWig or the W3C tends to look at observables very positively when it comes to being kind of an addition to like the event target. So event target is anything where you've got like an add event listener, remove event listener type API. And I don't think many people are very happy with that. And if you were to have observables as the result of, if you're just to say, okay, all event targets now have an on method, let's say, and you say on click, and then it gives you an observable of click events, or you say on data and it gives you an observable of data events or whatever. It gives you a really nice API because, for example, with on-click events, so there's a thing called event delegation in web development where what you do is you let's just say you hook all of the click events in the entire body of your document, and then you say, well, I only really want you to handle events that come from, like, only want you to handle this event if it came from a button, right? Like, you could do that. So basically, every button you click on the page goes through one single event. And the nice thing about that is, one, you have a single function allocation for this one event, and it's more efficient in that way. But the way that it sucks is, ergonomically as a developer, now I have to go through and I have to figure out how to kind of filter these events down to only the ones I care about. So you got to write some logic in there to handle that, and that kind of stinks. If you had an observable of click events for every click event in the body, and then that same API had a filter operator built right into it, then you'd say, on click dot filter, and then you can just filter down to, where the element, the source element has a class list has some class on it or something, or the source element dot tag name equals button, and all of a sudden you've got event delegation that's been filtered down. So it's a pretty powerful abstraction for that in particular. And I think that a lot of the other frameworks will be pretty happy with an API like that, even if they don't use observables. Odds are that they would find that useful within any sort of like framework that has to deal with wrapping some abstraction around event handling, because it's got a nicer teardown semantic. At the very least, you don't have to hang on to a function forever in order to remove an event listener. So even if you're writing like React or something, if the entire world had that API in like every browser, then you would probably target that API because you'd be writing less code and it would be easier for you to manage. So it would be a big win for a lot of people if we had an API like that. So hopefully soon.
I think this is so much fun, Ben. Honestly, like, this is way better than us recording random podcasts and then
like, what, you don't like the podcast where you ask me to do something really weird that I've never done before, and then we just struggle the whole time?
I love this. No, I love those podcasts. But more what I'm talking about is the podcast where we like like the WASM one we did with Sean and Jay. If we had just done it on Google Hangouts Live, it'd just be done.
Yeah.
So guess what I'm doing for the rest of my life?
Live. Do it live. YOLO.
Hell yeah, this is the best stuff ever.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad it is live. I'm glad I didn't have any wardrobe malfunctions or anything like that. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, nobody's watching. I'm pretty sure I made it private. I wasn't like, hey everyone, watch Ben struggle with the internet. Anyways. All right.
Right.
So I mean, at least what? So it's September. So our workshop happens December 2nd. So that's like in like 2 months, right? October, November, December.
Yeah. Yeah. And it shouldn't, I mean, you saw how fast I changed that code there to use the pipeable.
Yeah.
It's
You
it's
basically
it's a
you
pretty
can
it's a pretty
refactor everyone's code now.
yeah, it's a trivial refactor for things like workshop exercises for sure. Now to a refactor through an entire app, you're looking at probably a day or two of work to go through
Mhm.
and make those changes. It would be mildly painful, but the end result I think is really worth it, and I think there's a lot of people excited about it.
Guess what we're doing on Sunday?
Refactoring apps.
Woohoo!
Okay, we can do that.
But our apps will literally take less than an hour to refactor. So we'll probably screencast that too.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. Go hang out with us. Come hang out with us at RX Workshop, rxworkshop.com in December 2nd. It's also going to be on the internet too, so you can join us remotely. And probably by that time, RX6 will be released, right? Probably.
Yeah, but by the time of the workshop, yeah.
I'm just observing all the problems.
Well, at the very least, we'll have probably some betas out, I would hope.
Uh-huh, Ben.
Right? Like we'll have gotten through the alphas stage and we'll be into betas.
We're holding you to that. Igor's cringing right now. Igor's cringing. God, don't make any commitments.
It's this time you're probably sleeping if he's smart.
Alrighties. Okay, thank you everybody. See
All
you
right.
soon.
Bye.
Don't actually leave me. Hold on.
I'm leaving.